Red Hot Chili Peppers are one of those rare bands whose story is as wild, chaotic, and raw as the music they make. To really understand how they became global icons, you have to go back to Los Angeles in the late 1970s, where four misfit kids found each other and started something that would change rock music forever. Anthony Kiedis, born in Michigan, moved to Hollywood at age 11 to live with his dad, who was a struggling actor and drug dealer. That move would prove to be one of the most formative moments of his life. Growing up in LA, Anthony was surrounded by chaos, excess, and counterculture. His father, known around town as Blackie Dammit, exposed him to the Hollywood underworld at an age most kids were still riding bikes around the suburbs. Anthony's early years weren't easy. He battled loneliness, but he also developed a rebellious, fearless personality that would become the heartbeat of the Chili Peppers. Around the same time, a tall, shy kid from New York named Michael Balzeri moved to Los Angeles with his mother. That kid would later be known simply as Flea. At first, Flea wasn't even into rock music. His stepfather was a jazz musician, so Flea grew up playing trumpet and idolizing jazz legends like Miles Davis. In fact, it was jazz that taught him how to bend and twist musical rules, something that would later define the Chili Peppers' unique sound. Ironically, Flea didn't even pick up the bass guitar until his teenage years. His best friend at the time, Hillel Slovak, played guitar and convinced Flea to join his band. Flea fell in love with the instrument instantly, and within a year, he was playing with a style that nobody else could touch. Hillel Slovak was the glue that pulled these guys together. Born in Israel but raised in California, Hillel was obsessed with rock guitar heroes like Jimi Hendrix. By high school, he was already a local prodigy. He met Flea at Fairfax High School, and soon after, they met Jack Irons, a drummer with impeccable timing and a love for hard-hitting rhythms. Together, Hillel, Jack, and Flea formed a band called Anthem, which would later evolve into another project called What Is This? Around this same time, Flea introduced Anthony to the group. Anthony wasn't a singer yet, he was just a charismatic kid with a knack for storytelling. But once he grabbed a microphone, it was clear he had something. His rhythmic spoken-word style was less traditional singing and more like a mix of punk rock aggression and street poetry. The chemistry between the four was undeniable.
So we might as well get started, right? Right. Red Hot Chili Peppers, get up and jump!
Their very first show as the Red Hot Chili Peppers wasn't even supposed to be the start of a career. In 1983, Anthony, Flea, Hillel, and Jack got together to play a one-off gig at the Rhythm Lounge in Hollywood. They called themselves Tony Flo and the miraculously majestic Masters of Mayhem, a name that screams high school humor, but the audience went nuts. The band's combination of funky grooves, punk rock energy, and Anthony's half-rapped, half-yelled vocals was unlike anything else at the time. After that night, the band realized they were onto something. They changed their name to the Red Hot Chili Peppers and decided to chase it seriously.
We got a record. The record comes out on August 18th. It's called The Red Hot Chili Peppers. It's going to be the wildest, craziest, zaniest, movingest, groovingest thing you ever heard.
It's an explosion of color and sound. It'll boggle your mind and bedoozle your booty.
In those early days, they were dirt poor. Anthony has written about how the band would sometimes sleep in the same tiny apartment with no furniture, eating whatever scraps they could find. But their live shows started to build a reputation. They were notorious for their outrageous antics, sometimes taking the stage wearing only socks, and I mean only socks, in places that probably didn't feel too comfortable. It wasn't just shock value, though. Their performances were pure energy, like a bomb going off in the room. But success didn't come easily. Their first album, released in 1984, was recorded without Hillel and Jack because they were committed to their other band, What Is This? The record, produced by Andy Gill of the Gang of Four, had a raw, funk-punk vibe, but didn't capture their live energy. Sales were disappointing. But instead of quitting, the Chili Peppers doubled down. By their second and third albums, Hillel and Jack were back, and the band began honing the sound that would later explode. Behind the scenes, though, drugs were already becoming a dark shadow. Anthony and Hillel both struggled heavily with heroin. And just as the Chili Peppers were starting to find their identity, tragedy struck. On June 25, 1988, everything came crashing down. Hillel Slovak, the band's founding guitarist and the soul of their early sound, died of a heroin overdose. He was only 26. For the rest of the band, the loss was devastating in different ways. Anthony spiraled into guilt, blaming himself for not doing more to save his closest friend. Flea described Hillel's death as like losing a brother, someone he thought he'd grow old making music with. And Jack Irons, shattered by grief, simply couldn't go on. He quit the band entirely, saying he couldn't imagine playing without Hillel. It's hard to overstate how close the Red Hot Chili Peppers came to ending right there. They were broke, addicted, and now missing half their lineup. In a strange way, though, this moment became the band's crucible. Out of the heartbreak, Anthony and Flea made the decision to carry on. And it was that decision, in the wake of Hillel's death, that set the stage for their greatest music to come.
I'm an ocean in your bedroom, make you feel warm, make you wanna reassume.
They recruited John Frusciante, a teenage guitar prodigy who idolized the Chili Peppers, and drummer Chad Smith, who came in with a hard rock background. This new lineup clicked immediately. By 1991, they released Blood, Sugar, Sex, Magic, the album that launched them into superstardom. Songs like Give It Away and Under the Bridge became massive hits.
I don't ever wanna feel like I did that day. Take me to the place I love. Take me all the way.
A lesser-known fact is that Under the Bridge almost didn't get recorded. Anthony had written it as a personal poem about his loneliness and drug struggles, not intending it for the band. Producer Rick Rubin convinced him to show it to the others, and when they played it together, it became one of their most iconic songs. Even with success, the chaos never fully went away. Fame magnified everything: the partying, the addictions, the internal conflicts. John Frusciante famously quit the band in the middle of a tour in 1992, overwhelmed by the pressure. But the Chili Peppers always had this strange resilience. They kept reinventing themselves, bringing John back years later and continuing to evolve their sound. Looking back at their beginnings, it's almost surreal to think about. A misfit kid from Michigan, a jazz trumpet player from New York, an Israeli-born guitar prodigy, and a surfer drummer all meeting in Los Angeles and creating something totally new. They weren't polished, they weren't manufactured, they were raw, hungry, and living on the edge. The Red Hot Chili Peppers' rise wasn't a straight path. It was full of tragedy, reinvention, and survival. And maybe that's why they're still here decades later. Because from the very start, the Chili Peppers were never just about music. They were about friendship, chaos, and the strange beauty that comes from throwing yourself completely into your art, even if it burns you in the process.
We're slitting my throat.